The sterile clinic, filled with $500,000 machines, offered only despair for Lyra. The billionaire, Serafina Thorne, accustomed to buying any solution, watched with cold detachment. Then single dad Elias Vance, his oil-stained hands fixing a broken diagnostic tool, drew Lyra's attention. The girl stared at his worn toolkit, a symbol of honest work, and asked in a heartbreaking, fragile voice, "Mister, can you fix my legs?" Serafina Thorne froze, horrified by the question's raw audacity. Just days later, the rigid mother would crumble, weeping uncontrollably, forced to confront the one thing money could never buy. Elias Vance was a man defined not by his bank account, but by his quiet competence. At 42, his hands were scarred and strong, the hands of a master technician capable of fixing anything from industrial turbines to sensitive diagnostic equipment. 5 years ago, his world had shattered when his son, Leo, suffered a devastating accident. It left Leo with complex mobility issues and a future defined by endless physical therapy. Elias became a single dad, his sole mission being Leo's recovery. He had once held a prestigious position as a world-class structural engineer, designing groundbreaking projects. That career, however, demanded 60 hours a week and constant international travel, a schedule incompatible with full-time intensive care. Elias had traded his 7-figure salary and corner office for a tiny, flexible technical repair business. The pay was modest, but the time with Leo was priceless. He viewed his current profession not as a downgrade, but as a deliberate refocusing of his immense skill. He still solved complex problems. The scope was just reduced from building bridges to mending small motors. He found a quiet dignity and mastery, regardless of scale. His life had become simple: work, therapy, and continuous research. He had spent years learning everything he could about orthotics, muscle compensation, and the psychological impact of chronic pain, driven by the desperate need to help his son take one more small, independent step. This deep, practical knowledge was earned through suffering, not lecture halls. He understood the nuances of materials science and joint mechanics better than most medical professionals simply because his love was the ultimate research assistant. Elias's appearance often led to quick, dismissive judgments. His oil-stained jeans and faded jacket marked him as the hired help, a ghost in the gleaming, expensive halls of the Thorne Center. When he worked, however, his focus was absolute. He moved with the precision of a surgeon, his tools handled with the reverence one gives specialized equipment. He was currently making a microscopic adjustment to the sensor array of a $500,000 gate analyzer, a task the manufacturer's own team couldn't resolve. Serafina Thorne, in contrast, was a monolith of success. A single mother through circumstance and relentless ambition, she was accustomed to controlling every variable in her life with decisive action and immense capital. Her philosophy was simple: every problem had a price tag. Serafina carried herself like a walking balance sheet, assessing every person she met for their utility or their cost. Lyra's condition, a severe developmental dyskinesia, had been the only variable Serafina could not control. She had spared zero expense, bringing in specialists from London, Tokyo, and Zurich. Lyra had endured the best, most expensive treatments available: high-frequency nerve stimulation, advanced robotic limbs, and bespoke water therapy programs. The price tags were astronomical, but the results were non-existent. Failure was relentless. Treatment after treatment ended in the same stalemate, leaving Serafina increasingly isolated, her initial hope replaced by a rigid, desperate cynicism. She was failing her child, and her money was useless. Her deepest fears was becoming reality. There was a fundamental human problem her power could not solve. Elias was at the center that day because a critical component in the main diagnostic imaging unit had failed. It required a unique, high-precision repair that only a handful of people globally could execute, a job demanding the engineering mind he still possessed, married with his technician's hands. The meeting with Lyra was entirely spontaneous. She wheeled past him as he packed his gear. Lyra's curiosity was innocent and powerful. She was drawn to his tools, symbols of tangible action, Unlike the sterile, passive machines that usually surrounded her, she was not afraid of his working-class exterior. She saw purpose. Elias instinctively observed her. He didn't just see a disabled child. He saw the pattern of her sitting, the habitual tensing in her calves, and the way her foot curled inward, seeking stability where none existed. It was the trained eye of a father who had logged thousands of hours charting his own son's minute movements. He noted the subtle signs of anticipatory pain in her posture, a fear response he recognized instantly. In a poignant, almost symbolic detail, Elias carried a remnant of his past struggle, a heavy, customized aluminum ankle brace he had personally welded for Leo years ago, before Leo progressed to lighter aids. He was preparing to repurpose the materials for a new project. It was rough, functional, and built with pure, unadulterated love. Lyra reached out, her small fingers tracing the raw metal of the old brace. The simple artifact, heavy with utility and paternal care, resonated with a promise of real help, unlike the cold, polished chromium of the commercial devices. Her eyes, suddenly full of light, whispered pure, unfiltered hope. Serafina watched the interaction, the transaction-minded billionaire finally forced to listen to a man who spoke in the currency of lived experience, not dollars. He wasn't selling hope. He was reflecting it. A small, almost invisible crack appeared in the cold armor of the room, letting in a single ray of light. For the first time, Serafina felt a chilling realization. This man understood her problem better than any doctor with a PhD. In the days that followed, Lyra was relentless. She pleaded with Serafina to bring the fix-it dad back, not to operate, but simply to talk about his son and the strong brace. Serafina was conflicted. Her logic screamed against trusting an unaccredited technician, but Lyra's sudden, vibrant enthusiasm was impossible to ignore. Seeing her daughter animated for the first time in months, Serafina conceded. She had exhausted the conventional world. Perhaps it was time to risk the unconventional. Serafina immediately engaged her chief of staff to run a deep dive into Elias Vance. The resulting report was what truly shook her. It didn't just confirm his engineering genius. It detailed the exact moment he walked away from a career trajectory that would have made him a titan of industry. The report included quotes from former colleagues who spoke of him as irreplaceable and a genius who built solutions from first principles. He was not a failure, he was a renunciate. Serafina, who valued professional success above all else, found herself staring at the printout, unable to comprehend such a profound sacrifice. The two single parents met again, this time on Serafina's initiative. Elias was unfazed by the opulence of her private consultation room. He maintained his focus solely on Lyra. He lowered his promises to rock-bottom reality. He did not guarantee walking. His goals were smaller, yet infinitely more valuable. We can reduce the chronic pain. We can mitigate the spasticity. We can make you feel safer when you attempt to move. Fear is the worst fuel for a damaged body. He pulled out a simple drafting pad and sketched his solution. It was a personalized, dynamic support system. A highly customized exoskeleton designed not to force movement, but to provide precise, three-dimensional stability at the ankle and knee, which he believed was the key to unlocking Lyra's own motor memory. The design was elegantly simple, rooted in fundamental engineering principles. He explained the concept. The body tenses because the brain anticipates joint collapse. The brace provides a reliable external anchor to trick the proprioceptive system into relaxing the defensive spasms. Lyra's medical team, Dr. Chen and the chief physical therapist, were openly skeptical. Dr. Chen summarized the general sentiment. Mr. Vance, we appreciate the elegance of your design, but it lacks the biofeedback integration and motor control chips of current models. It is, frankly, too simple for a condition this severe. They viewed his suggestion as charming, yet hopelessly naive. However, since the design was non-invasive and did not interfere with Lyra's existing medication or nerve therapy, they offered cautious, resigned neutrality. They had no better plan. Serafina, true to form, immediately offered massive financing. I want to fund a pilot study immediately. I'll underwrite the entire division. You name your price, Mr. Vance. A 5-year contract, total control. She was trying desperately to convert his personal passion into a commercial asset, to buy his genius and his time. Elias shook his head firmly. Thank you, ma'am, but no. He met her eyes, which were accustomed to immediate compliance. This phase is personal. If you put money on it now, it becomes a clinical trial for profit. If it fails, it breaks Lyra's trust in money, and that's a dangerous lesson. I am not a vendor. I am a fellow parent offering a suggestion. He laid out his conditions. He required only the material cost, which he would front, and the time to build the device. Crucially, he demanded the exclusive right to trial it personally with Lyra, without interference from the formal medical protocol. He wanted this built on trust, not legal documentation. Serafina, humbled and strangely compelled by his moral clarity, reluctantly agreed. She found herself signing an agreement where she gained everything but gave nothing, a completely novel experience. The next few nights were spent in Elias's small functional garage. Working beneath a single bare bulb, he used sophisticated materials, aerospace-grade aluminum and lightweight carbon fiber, in his high-precision technician tools. He worked with a focus that had once built skyscrapers, now channeled into a frame for a 10-year-old girl. The air was filled with the rhythmic zing of the custom welder and the soft whirring of the precision grinder. Every joint was manually checked and balanced, calibrated not to a machine's tolerance, but to Lyra's human, unique body. Leo, his own son, became an invaluable partner. Leo, intimately familiar with the discomfort and design flaws of generic braces, helped his father take sensitive measurements of Lyra's leg geometry, measurements only a child who had endured similar pain could truly understand. He recorded angles, pressure points, and subtle muscle weakness with clinical care. It needs to support here, Dad, Leo would point out, but without rubbing the bone right there. That's where the fear starts. Lyra, counting down the days until the fitting, experienced a dramatic transformation in her mood. The anxiety that had dominated her therapy sessions lifted. She had hope that was tangible, built by a kind man in a distant garage. Her spirit soared. Serafina, who had been unable to buy her daughter happiness, was stunned to see it delivered by hope alone. Serafina often drove to Elias's quiet, middle-class neighborhood, parking her luxury sedan a block away, just to sit and watch the faint light pouring from his garage door. She didn't dare interrupt, simply absorbing the quiet dedication that contrasted so starkly with the frantic pace of her own life. The day of the initial fitting arrived. It was held in the expansive but now strangely quiet therapy gym. The air was thick with tension. Dr. Chen, the therapist, and Serafina stood silently, every gesture held in check. Serafina was visibly nervous. She had lived this moment too many times. The grand, expensive promise leading inevitably to the silent, crushing letdown. She had already constructed her mental shield against another failure, ready to comfort Lyra, ready to write another check. Elias walked in, carrying the Vance stabilizer. It was aesthetically rough, its joints visible, its metal raw and honest. But it was perfectly formed, a rough-hewn piece of certainty in a world of smooth, unreliable promises. Elias approached Lyra, his movements slow and grounding. He fitted the stabilizers to her legs, securing the straps carefully, ensuring no pressure points existed. He knelt beside her, meeting her eyes. The scent of fresh metal and workshop grease filled the air, replacing the cold, antiseptic smell. Lyra, he murmured, his voice firm yet gentle. Listen to your legs. They are afraid. They are telling you the ground is going to crumble. The frame is here to whisper to them that they are safe. It's a reliable floor. We are just going to try to stand. Not walk, just stand. The goal is only to feel secure for one breath. Lyra placed her small, trembling hands on the parallel bars. The metal of the stabilizer felt cool and strangely reassuring against her skin. She closed her eyes, remembering years of pain, bracing for the inevitable, debilitating spasticity. She focused on Elias's voice, the calm anchor in the chaos of her body. She pushed her weight down, the muscles in her arms straining. Then a sudden, powerful stillness. The anticipated pain did not arrive. The pressure was distributed flawlessly, bypassing the usual trigger points. The custom-molded structure supported her where she needed it most, providing the necessary rigidity without the agonizing compression. Lyra opened her eyes, startled. The simple act of stabilizing her ankle and knee, executed with such precision, negated the reflexive, agonizing muscle contraction. A deep, psychological fear that had rooted itself in her brain began to recede. For the first time since the accident, her brain received a positive, non-threatening feedback loop from her legs. With a surge of energy she hadn't known she possessed, she committed to the movement. She didn't push against the pain. She pushed into the stability. She straightened. She was vertical. Lyra stood completely upright. Her body line was clean, straight, and true. It was a small movement, a minor triumph in the grand scheme of medicine. But to Lyra, it was a revolution. Her feet were flat on the padded floor, not curled inward. The room froze, suspended in silent, breathless astonishment. The digital clock on the wall seemed to stutter. Serafina, who had braced for failure, stood rigid and immobile. The practiced mask of her face dissolved, replaced by a look of sheer, paralyzing shock, then dawning, overwhelming reality. Her carefully constructed worldview, that effort and money were equal to results, crumbled instantly. She could not articulate a single word. The sound that escaped her lips was a choked, primal whimper, more animal than executive. Lyra was the first to break the silence. The sheer, overwhelming relief of the pain-free stance broke her. She dissolved into profound, joyous sobs. "Mommy, I'm standing! Look, I'm standing! I can feel the floor, Mommy!" Twist 1. Empathy as design. This was the profound moment of realization. The breakthrough was not the result of cutting-edge pharmaceuticals or complex algorithms. It was a victory of correct diagnosis of pain. Elias realized Lyra's nervous system reacted violently to instability, causing the spasms. By stabilizing the joint perfectly, he calmed the nervous system, allowing Lyra's body to execute the voluntary motion. He hadn't treated the symptom. He had solved the structural communication error. It was applied compassion, a simple engineering solution rooted in paternal devotion. Dr. Chen later admitted, "We were trying to brute force the nervous system. Mr. Vance simply asked it nicely." Twist 2. The truth of the sacrifice. While Lyra was standing, Dr. Chen's assistant quietly slipped Serafina a printout, the full, comprehensive background check on Elias Vance. Serafina's eyes darted down the page, scanning the text beneath the bold headline, Elias Vance, Ph.D. Document former Chief Research and Development Engineer, Solstice Fusion Project. He hadn't just been an engineer, he had been a global leader. He hadn't just quit to care for a sick son, he had abandoned the pinnacle of his profession, a career worth hundreds of millions in future earnings, to master the art of pediatric orthotics because his son, Leo, was suffering from an even more complex, painful, and financially crushing condition than Lyra's. Elias had chosen love over legacy. Elias understood Lyra's struggle not through a textbook, but through Leo's screams. He knew the precise flavor of a father's crushing helplessness because he had tasted it every night for 5 years. He didn't just design a brace, he designed a shield against despair. Lyra stayed standing for a full 5 seconds, supported by the honest metal, fueled by the sheer power of possibility. She slowly sank back into the chair, breathless but radiant. The two physical therapists spontaneously broke into a quiet round of applause, a breach of professionalism they couldn't control. Dr. Chen, wiping a tear from his eye, nodded, his professional skepticism crushed by the reality of the small, simple device. "It's viable, more than viable. It's, exactly what we missed. A perfect marriage of physics and compassion." The floodgates finally broke for Serafina. All the years of suppressed fear, of buying, failing, and isolating herself crashed down. She dropped to her knees beside Lyra, her perfect facade shattered, clutching her daughter in a messy, desperate embrace. She wept with the raw, uncontrollable intensity of a woman liberated from the heaviest weight, the tears soaking her expensive silk shirt. She reached out blindly, finding Elias's hand, clasping it hard. Her knuckles were white. She could not speak the simple words, "Thank you." Instead, she whispered something far more profound. "You saw us. You actually saw us." The silence in the room was deafening, the air thick with the sound of a billionaire's tears and a father's quiet vindication. The Vance stabilizer, now a symbol of hope, was continuously fine-tuned by Elias in collaboration with the hospital's fabrication lab. He didn't lose the heart in the design. He simply used their resources to make the metal lighter and the fit even more precise based on Lyra's daily feedback. He insisted on working directly with the technicians, treating them as peers and teaching them the subtle art of custom fitting based on empathy, not just metrics. Lyra's commitment to rehabilitation became infectious. Fueled by the exhilarating memory of standing, she worked harder, longer, and with genuine happiness. Her smile was a new fixture in the previously somber rehabilitation center. She found the discipline easy, having seen Elias's dedication firsthand. Serafina Thorne initiated the biggest change in her life. She completely reorganized her schedule. Board meetings were moved, global travel was curtailed. The woman who once spent 80% of her time focused on corporate strategy now spent 80% of her afternoons by Lyra's side, observing, learning, and cheering. She was actively studying the language of vulnerability. She stopped demanding immediate results and started celebrating tiny incremental gains, the true currency of progress. Serafina even began asking Elias detailed questions about the maintenance of the brace, the torque limits, and the materials science behind the composite construction. She was learning not just how to be present, but how to appreciate the genius of the man who had humbled her. She organized a small lunch for the rehab staff, breaking the custom of never interacting with service personnel. The official launch of the Vance Thorne initiative, dedicated to pro bono orthotics, was a quiet, profound affair. Serafina handled the immense logistical complexity, negotiating material supply chains, securing clinic partnerships, and building the nonprofit structure with the same ruthless efficiency she applied to her company, but now driven by a selfless mission. Elias, meanwhile, established the new workshop, mentoring a dedicated team of engineers. Their partnership became a masterclass in collaboration, proving that the technicians' hands were as essential as the billionaire's capital. Serafina would often visit the workshop, not to supervise, but to simply watch Elias work, recognizing the deep satisfaction of creating something truly meaningful. A beautiful friendship blossomed between the two children. Leo, who knew the exhaustion of physical therapy better than anyone, became Lyra's gentle, encouraging training companion. Their relationship transcended their parents' disparate backgrounds. They didn't just train, they conspired. They exchanged strategies on managing fatigue and the best ways to trick their legs into obeying. Leo, still limping slightly, gained confidence from being the one who knew the ropes. The hospital's administration, witnessing the profound emotional and physical success, approached Elias with a formal proposition to fund a full R&D partnership, seeking to integrate the Vance principle into their core offerings. They were ready to offer him a full professorship and an unlimited research budget. Elias accepted the leadership role, but with one absolute non-negotiable condition to Serafina. The primary focus and resources of the new Vance Thorne initiative had to be dedicated to providing free, custom solutions for children from low-income families, those who could never afford Lyra's care. His former profession had taught him about building equity. His new one taught him about building opportunity. He ensured his painful past served a greater purpose. The ultimate detail of resurrection unfolded in the center's sunny courtyard one mild morning. Lyra and Leo were walking side by side, outside the confines of the therapy room. Lyra, supported by the stabilizer, was taking deliberate, if short, steps. Leo walked beside her, keeping pace, his hand ready but not touching. The air was filled not with the drone of machines, but with the pure, carefree sound of children's laughter. Serafina was learning the true definition of motherhood, one rooted in shared vulnerability and active presence, rather than outsourced excellence. She realized her greatest investment was not money, but time and trust. The immense value of her wealth was redefined. It was not the source of the miracle, but the fuel for its expansion, now dedicated to replicating Elias's selfless act globally. The wide chasm of economic and social status between the billionaire and the technician ceased to exist, replaced by a common bond of deep respect. Serafina saw Elias not as an employee, but as her equal, an architect of possibility. Faith was built, piece by tiny piece, through humble, dedicated actions. The miracle they received was profoundly ordinary, yet perfectly tailored to their need. Hope had found a new, powerful voice. Lyra's condition remained chronic. She was not cured, but she had gained profound mobility and independence. She could now manage short distances with the stabilizer and began participating in activities previously unimaginable. She had a future built on achievable goals, not impossible expectations. Her illness was a part of her life, but no longer the definition of it. Serafina Thorne finally understood that the most precious commodities, time, empathy, and genuine connection, could never be acquired through acquisition or monetary force. Her ambition, once directed outward to conquer the market, was now directed inward, to build a lasting legacy of true help. She found her fulfillment not in the roar of the stock market, but in the quiet thank you letters from parents whose children were receiving their first Vance stabilizer, free of charge. Elias Vance consistently refused the label of hero or savior. He simply saw himself as an experienced guide, a father who had learned the hardest lessons and was now sharing that hard-won knowledge with another devoted parent. He had his career back, but this time it was defined by his family's needs and his moral compass, not Wall Street's demands. He proved that true genius serves love first. One afternoon, standing together in the sunlit waiting area, Serafina watched Elias adjust Leo's customized shoe insert. She didn't speak. She just nodded, her eyes acknowledging the deep, quiet burden they both carried, the constant, vigilant effort of special needs parenting. Elias returned the look, a simple, nonverbal exchange that confirmed their equal footing as partners and parents. It was the silent understanding of two people who spoke the same language of sacrificial love. The two families continued their journey, their lives permanently entwined by the small, functional piece of metal built in a humble garage. Serafina's resources ensured Elias's invention reached thousands of children, but Elias ensured the humility and heart remained central to the mission. The true definition of the miracle was permanently etched into their lives. Understanding, Elias's insight; persistence, Lyra's practice; and unconditional love, Serafina's presence. It wasn't a sudden cure, it was a sustainable path forward. Lyra stood stronger, steadier, gaining a few more precious seconds of independence every single day. She began using a light walking stick instead of parallel bars. She even started taking a ceramics class, using her newly stable stance for delicate, focused work. Serafina still cried frequently when watching her daughter, but these were tears of profound, pure happiness. They were the tears of a mother who had lost everything, only to find the one thing she truly needed: the vulnerability to accept help and the wisdom to give back with humility. The bright morning light spilled across the polished floor of the gym, no longer a clinical space, but a vibrant arena of daily triumphs. A new collaborative chapter had begun, proving that the deepest connections are forged not in wealth, but in shared sacrifice and empathy. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to NL Touching Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.